All right, Peter wrote in saying, would you say that antidepressants make you a different person with a different personality? And is it right for them to do that? Along the same lines, are you a different person when you are drunk versus sober? Sort of different questions, right? And I know many people who have taken antidepressants or anti-anxiety drugs, SSRIs, whatever. Nobody has told me that they feel like they are different people, right? That's never something that I've ever heard anybody say. What they do say is, this sort of takes me out of being hindered by something that I consider to be not like me and allows me to just be more like the me I want to be. So that's a totally different way of understanding it. Now, you might say, well, if somebody is just clinically depressed or naturally anxious, to whatever extent somebody can be naturally anxious, right, considering nature and nurture, then the antidepressants or the anti-anxiety pills could make you a, quote, different person, or at least change some of your the way you feel you need to act. But in speaking to people I've spoken to, nobody has said they really feel like they're just different people when they take those drugs. They feel like they are able to just function in a way that is more in line with who they consider themselves to be or want to be.
I have heard people say they feel like a different person when they're on them, but it's different. It's not so much you feel like a different person in the way you view the world and the way you think.
Right, you're not going to become a religious nut if normally you're an atheist because you're on Zoloft or whatever.
Right, exactly. But they do say, I feel like a different person because I feel like this medication has turned me into a zombie. I feel like this medication is slowing me down.
Interesting.
So in that way, yes. But in the ultimate sense, no. I don't think it turns you into a different personality type.
So part two of the question from Peter was, is it right for antidepressants to turn you into a different person? Well, what's right or not, I mean, we just had a disagreement sort of over whether it turns you into a different person anyway. So I don't know that I really even have an answer for, is it right?
Well, I think I can answer this question in a way, and I would say that it is very important to have these medications because these medications do save people's lives. And while it works much better for some than it does for others,
right,
I don't think this is something that we should be getting rid of. I mean, right, ultimately, most people are going to have the free will here and decide whether or not they want to take this stuff.
Most people will.
Yeah.
So let's get to the last part, which I think is also interesting. What about, along the same lines, are you a different person when you were drunk versus sober? I believe that when you were drunk, you were not a different person. And we've heard, for example, when Mel Gibson was drunk, all of a sudden he had crazy things to say about Jews, and he wanted us to believe that it was just because of the drinking. I do not buy that at all, Lewis. It is true, however, that if you are sort of predetermined to get physically, if you're predetermined, if you have a tendency to become violent when confronted, for example, there's no doubt that sober, 1 in a million situations might get you to that point, and drunk, 1 in 1,000 situations might get you to that point. But I don't believe that people are fundamentally different when they're drinking, particularly when it comes to being disinhibited and saying things. I think, if anything, they're more likely to say the things they actually think. And with the Mel Gibson stuff and the Jews and are you Jewish and Jews control this and that, the idea that those thoughts never cross his mind when he's not drinking, but all of a sudden he drinks, and who knows from where it comes from, the guy just is really suspicious of Jews.
Yeah. Vino veritas.
Right.
I think it's clear to me that alcohol is a disinhibitor, and so I don't think you turn into a different person. I mean, you could be at the bar, and there's some guy sitting next to you. The guy hasn't had anything to drink yet, and he wants to talk to you about politics. Now, maybe after 8 drinks, this guy just wants to bash your head in. But I think even after 0 or no drinks, somewhere in the back of this guy's mind, he's probably thinking, I could definitely beat this guy up. Or maybe I'd like to. So I think alcohol is a disinhibitor. I don't think you're a different person when you drink. I think the truth comes out when you drink.
Now, what about an example where you say, okay, I have significant social anxiety and I'm very shy, but if I have 4 drinks, all of a sudden I no longer feel anxious and I'm really, really outgoing in a bar and talk to people. I would question whether that's really a different person. You're still a socially anxious and shy person who is acting in a different way because you are a drunk and socially anxious and shy person, right? I mean, the idea of it's a different person is what I totally reject. You can change your behavior as a result of substances, situations, therapy, whatever. But fundamentally, you're still the same person who is a socially anxious person who, when sober, acts one way, and when drunk, acts a different way. And it's actually quite common that socially anxious people act a particular way when they do drink. It doesn't mean they're not socially anxious anymore.
Yeah, and let's not take anything away from people who decide to stop drinking
Right.
because of the way it affects them.
Of course.
We're not saying that these are bad people. I mean, because they have issues when they drink. But, it's just a little disclaimer I feel I have to throw in there.
Very, very important. No question about it. I think that that makes sense.